Hello and welcome back to Cult Leader. I'm your cult leader, Spencer Henry, and this week is all about dolls, y'all, and I couldn't be more excited. On Cult Leader, we've covered some infamous haunted dolls in the past, and this week we're going to re-examine one of my favorites, but also introduce some new dolls to the collection. And trust me, this is not a night listen unless you're into that kind of thing. A big sicko. Okay, I have to laugh a little bit because if you told me one day I'd be a 34-year-old man talking about dolls for a living, I'd probably actually have been pretty upset. But little did I know how cool it actually is. Okay, let's talk about how we got here. I was reminded of this topic recently when somebody commented on my post about Robert the doll, and I was like, whoa, throwback. I totally remember recording that episode because I was in Palm Springs with my sister Olivia. And can I just say, when she is fully settled into mom life, mom of two life, we need to get her back on the show because that era was so fun. And I actually just got home from Northern California. I was visiting her because we went to meet her new baby, Hank Holiday, who is just an absolute dream of a baby. Cutest little thing. Love him so much already. And Leo is already 2, her older son, and he's just so much fun now because he can like fully talk, answer questions, and he's just funny. Kids are funny. But enough about kids. It's time for grown-up talk. Okay, kids, go to your room. The adults are talking about dolls. And honestly, I was like, where do I even start with this episode? Do I start with Robert? Do we want a rehash, or is he our grand finale for our throwback episode? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Annabelle lately, and she's pretty iconic. So I kind of feel like this week we're going to start with Annabelle because it just feels right. She's been making headlines lately because Annabelle is on the loose, girls. Well, not really, but the internet was in an uproar regarding her rumored disappearance last week, which absolutely killed me because I'm like, what do you mean she's missing? What do you mean Annabelle the doll's missing? Imagine my surprise. I'm scrolling about it's like Annabelle's on the loose. I'm like, what? Where is she? Well, it did later get debunked, but she is on the go, and we're going to talk about it because you know who doesn't need to be traveling anywhere? Annabelle. And first of all, how have we never talked about her before? Like, you're telling me this show has been going on for almost 7 years and not once have we covered her on an episode? We've alluded to her, we've made nods to her, but we've never actually talked about just Annabelle. It feels sacrilegious. It feels like it goes against everything this cult stands for. How could we leave her out? I remember when I first found out that Annabelle was actually just a Raggedy Ann doll, but it somehow made it more creepy to me because those dolls are so unassuming and everyone had them. Well, not unassuming. If you look at their faces, you're like, you've seen some shit. But to be honest, I would be so mad too if my name was Raggedy something. It feels fucked up. I'd also transcend into a haunted relic for the rest of time. But this isn't my story. This is the story. This is history. This is her story. We got to start from the top. In the 1970s, there was this nursing student named Donna who received a Raggedy Ann doll as a gift from her mom. Do got to cite really quick, there are other sources out there who claim that the nursing student's name was actually Deirdre, but that's besides the point. We're going to call her Donna because that's how she is always referred to, or at least 90% of the time. But anyway, apparently the doll was given to her as a birthday gift, and she was in her mid to late 20s at the time. Most sources say 28, so it made me kind of wonder if there's more of a backstory there. Was this a doll she always wanted but never was able to get? I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum, but it feels a little odd, no? Like, if you were in your 20s in the 70s, feel free to chime in. Does that seem like a normal situation, like a gift you might have gotten for your 28th birthday? I don't know, but I do know that is what happened. Donna gets the doll, and she brings it home to the apartment she was living in with her pal Angie. That was her roommate, and she was also a nursing student at the time. And pretty much from the jump, shit gets really weird. Donna would set Annabelle down on the couch, right? And then she'd like leave for work or school, go about her day, and then she'd come home and Annabelle would be in her bedroom with the door closed, even if nobody else had been there that day. It was as if Annabelle had just gone and done this on her own. She was just making herself right at home. Things quickly escalated. According to Donna, as well as Angie, they stated that they later found notes around their apartment written on parchment paper with the words "help me" or "help us" scrawled across them. The notes, the alleged movement, that's one thing. It's terrifying. But when things got physical, it took things to a whole other level. One day, Angie, the roommate, her boyfriend Lou, is in Angie's room taking a nap when he wakes up in excruciating pain and there are 3 bloody scratch marks across his chest. The pain of the wound is what woke him up, but he had no idea where they came from. He was home alone at the time. Or was he? Suspicion quickly arose that perhaps Annabelle had attacked him as he slept. I mean, the doll was doing strange things. Had she taken things up a notch? Another version of the story goes that Lou was napping and he's like laying in Angie's bedroom, right? Well, he hears what he thinks is somebody trying to break into Donna's bedroom through her window. There's all this like rustling and banging happening next door, so he darts towards her bedroom, busts open the door, but there was no stranger in there. No robber, only Annabelle, lying face down on the middle of the bedroom floor. Certainly not where she'd last been left. Depending on which version of the story you go with, the scratch marks apparently disappeared within 2 days, completely vanished as if they had never been there in the first place, as if nothing had happened. Either way, all 3 of them, Donnie, Angie, Lou, are like, this is fucked, right? Because it's insane. We need to do something about this, but they obviously know, like, okay, we can't go to the police with this. So, this Raggedy Ann doll is absolutely wreaking havoc on our apartment. So instead, they decide that they are going to contact a medium. And so that's exactly what they do. They speak with this medium. The medium agrees to come over, and she's like, okay, I'm going to come over. We'll hold a seance because I want to see if perhaps there's more to the doll than what appears. Maybe you guys are right. Maybe she is haunted. Boy, was she right. There was definitely more to this doll than they had previously thought. So the medium comes over to the girls' apartment one evening, and she holds said seance. And she gets this vision, okay? It comes to her. She alerts the girls that according to her clairvoyance, the doll was actually haunted by the spirit of a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins. Hence how this Raggedy Ann came to be known as Annabelle. But the medium's like, you guys, you have nothing to worry about, okay? Fear not. She's just a scared little girl. She wants to know if you'll keep her here, make her feel loved. So Donna and Angie make what everyone in the paranormal field would call a grave error when they tell the spirit of this 7-year-old girl that she's allowed to stay. They invited her into their home and proclaimed that they loved her and she didn't have to leave, just stop the nonsense. As you and any horror movie buff could imagine, you could see this coming from a mile away. Things got even worse after that visit, after that seance. The movements, the threatening energy, it evolved into something that would require more than a medium this time. They needed a priest, gals. Okay, cult babes, they're like, we're calling in the big dogs here. We don't know what's going on, but it's dark-sided. They somehow contact a local priest, I think he was Catholic, and he comes in and he performs a literal exorcism, tries to cast the spirit away, grabs the holy water, all of that, prays over the apartment, but in a very Linda Blair exorcist-style turn of events, he is overwhelmed with what he believed to be a demonic possession inside that doll. And that's allegedly when he decided to make the move to contact Ed and Lorraine Warren, which is how this story got so famous. He knew he couldn't handle this on his own. So he reaches out to the Warrens. And I was wondering, I'm like, well, how did he know of them? Because I feel like all their famous cases happened in like the later 70s and 80s, aside from Annabelle. And at this point, the demon banishing power couple, they had already built, I guess, a bit of a reputation in the New England area and within the Catholic Church. They were by no means legendary or world renowned. Nobody was making movies about them at the time, but they were known enough to be utilized as a resource by priests. Ed and Lorraine had started doing talks and lectures at a bunch of different colleges and churches all around New England. And these nights often had titles like A Night with the Demonologist and featured little spooky slideshows, Lorraine's psychic impressions, and stories of demonic possession. And I'm like, damn, why is that never popping up in my area? If I saw something that said A Night with them, I'd be all about it. That's probably how the priest knew them, right? They were kind of like the cool, creepy guest speakers for clergy who didn't want to deal with, or didn't feel like they could deal with demons themselves. And Ed Warren was also going around as a self-taught demonologist, which may sound sus, and it kind of is. There's a lot to the Warrens. But at the time, there weren't a lot of people doing that. So he became kind of like the lay demonologist that the clergy would refer to when, again, they didn't want to deal with like the messy spiritual stuff directly. The church liked having someone unofficial to call when things got weird without needing to go full Vatican exorcist, right? That sounds like a lot of paperwork or phone calls that they just didn't want to make. Anyway, so the Warrens are involved now. And the Warrens eventually come to meet the Annabelle doll for themselves. And you guys, it gives me full chills. Ed and Lorraine immediately conclude that Annabelle is not haunted by the spirit of a 7-year-old girl, okay? Annabelle is being possessed by something, yes, but that something is not human. It's demonic. Baby, that don't feel good. Okay, that actually scares the shit out of me. Probably Donna and Angie as well, you can imagine. I hate it. That's not even the worst of it. According to the Warrens, this entity, whatever it was, wasn't looking to live inside of a Raggedy Ann doll. It wanted to possess a human. It wanted to possess Donna. Or Angie. Ed and Lorraine ended up taking Annabelle into their custody. And according to their son-in-law, Tony Spera, Ed told Lorraine to be careful on the ride back to their house after they picked up Annabelle, and that they should avoid the highways. And thank God she listened, because apparently Annabelle was just flipping out in the car, whatever that means. And it was so sinister, the energy in there, that Ed actually had to sprinkle Annabelle with holy water several times before she would calm down. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. It scares me so much, and I don't even know why. I mean, I do know why, but I also am like, I don't know what I believe, but it just scares me. So they take Annabelle home and they encased her inside of a glass box that had several prayers inscribed on it. The Lord's Prayer, St. Michael's Prayer, and they would pray over Annabelle in her encasement every so often to ensure that the spirit or entity, whatever was attached to the doll, stayed put. It's like it doesn't need to move, okay? But that's not where the story ends. I wish it was, but there are several alleged follow-up stories of Annabelle absolutely back on her bullshit. One priest who came by to see the doll at Ed and Lorraine's allegedly picked it up and shook it around because he was like, there's no way this doll is haunted. Like, that's not real. Well, sir, you shouldn't have done that, because guess what happened to him on his way home? Totaled his brand new car. Almost lost his life. He took that as a warning. He's like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have done that. The Warrens owned and operated an occult museum, which I feel like we have maybe talked about before, which was connected to their home in Monroe, Connecticut. And it includes an enclave of haunted objects, but I'll save that for another time because that deserves an episode of its own. And that's mostly where Annabelle calls home today. But right now, she's living it up on tour. Well, she was. Her current owner, their son-in-law, Tony Spera, will take her around from time to time. And in mid-May of this year, Annabelle was transported to Ghost City Tours in New Orleans for a meet and greet, just paying a visit to the Big Easy. And it caused an uproar because it seems that as soon as Annabelle arrived in town, things started going haywire. The internet was singing her praises when an old plantation, Nottoway, burnt down. While it was currently being used as a wedding venue/museum, its history is very deeply rooted in racism, and some were upset that it was a piece of history lost. And obviously there's a thought process of like, well, it's here and it reminds us of the terrible injustices that happened in the past. Like, we can't erase history. Others, however, are saying, sayonara, there's evil in those walls. That house was built by evil people on evil land, and we're glad it's gone. So people are thanking Annabelle for that. But not only did that happen while Annabelle was in town, shortly after her arrival, there was also a prison escape where 10 inmates escaped from New Orleans Parish Prison. 5 of them were caught, but as of right now, 5 remain at large, at least at the time of recording. So we'll see what happens there. But instantly, after both of those instances, rumors began swirling that Annabelle was behind them. And then things got even crazier when people started saying that the doll had gone missing. But that seems to just be a conspiracy that was being touted on TikTok. According to Tony Spera, the Warrens' son-in-law, who now oversees the museum and their haunted contents, Annabelle is safely back home, exactly where she belongs. And where she should remain, because even the Warrens themselves warn people, do not mess with her. But if we know anything about people, they're gonna mess, okay? They're gonna try their luck. There's always going to be someone proving like, I could do this. But yeah, well, let's leave Annabelle at home, okay? Moving on, it's time to meet a doll who's less raggedy and more divine Barbie energy, and yet still absolutely haunted. This is the legend of the Pulao Ubin Barbie, sometimes known as the German Shrine Girl. Pulao Ubin is a small island off the coast of Singapore, and this story begins with a man in the early 2000s, 2002, who reportedly had a very vivid dream one evening. And in it, a young girl who had died years ago during a police chase after being falsely accused of theft begged him to find her a doll. So, naturally, this guy goes to a department store, he finds a Barbie, dresses her in traditional Southeast Asian attire, places her in a glass case at the girl's roadside shrine. And that's when the activity started. Because apparently, people say that Barbie, she watches you. She moves on her own, and if you pray to her, she just might grant your wish. The doll allegedly shifts her gaze and moves inside of her case. People come and leave her all sorts of offerings, from makeup to perfume, jewelry, very much Sephora meets seance, okay? They're like, I'm giving you this if you can just protect me or make my wish come true. Locals and spiritual believers treat her like a folk deity. This Barbie isn't going to the mall. She's haunting a shrine on a haunted island, and she might just rearrange your fate if you show her enough respect. I couldn't find that much information, but I did see, according to local legend, there was this little girl, she was a German girl, who was living with her parents on a coffee plantation in Ubin during the outbreak of World War I. When British soldiers had come to capture her family, she ran for her life, but ended up accidentally running off the side of a cliff. After the war, when her parents returned to the coffee plantation, they couldn't find her anywhere. There was no trace of their daughter. After some time went by, they came to the conclusion that she must have been captured or passed away, which is when a shrine was later built to honor her. All right, cult babes, now let's go down under to meet another famous haunted doll named Leta. As in, let me out of here. If you think it's a cute pun, wait until you hear what he does to people. That's right, we've got a male doll this time. So around the same time as Annabelle was raising hell in America, back in the 1970s, this Australian guy named Kerry Walton went poking around an abandoned, decrepit house in Wagga Wagga. Yes, that's a real place. Yes, I'm obsessed. And legend says that in the floorboards of this decrepit home, he found a large wooden doll with a grimacing face, real human hair, and glass eyes that stared right into your soul. Want to know what I would do if I found a fucking wooden doll with a grimacing face, real human hair, and glass eyes that stared right into my soul underneath the floorboards of an abandoned home? I would fucking burn the house down. Okay, where's Annabelle? Get Annabelle in here with her matches. This place has got to go. But no, not Carrie. He took the doll home, which is mistake number one. When I tell you that nothing compares to the sight of this doll, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll post a picture. You guys, it's terrifying. Not to mention, the doll is hundreds of years old. And did I mention the human hair? Where did that come from? In 2018, he told the Warwick News, quote, I reckon he walks around in the nighttime. We came in here as a new house, and I've never heard so many strange things in my life, he said. It's also been reported that as soon as he brought the doll home, the family's dogs attacked the doll on sight. People feel dizzy and have fainted around the doll, or even had swelling in their limbs. Some say this doll moves on its own and will kind of reposition itself around the house. And one woman reportedly screamed just looking at him and said she felt like she was just being watched. But here's the kicker. Carrie still owns it. He even takes it on tour, like Annabelle. Like it's his little demonic plus one. And it's like, sir, don't do that. Okay, we don't travel with haunted dolls. We bind them, we bury them, we release them, or we put them in a glass encasement and write some prayers on the outside of it. That brings us to our grand finale, Robert the Doll. So as we mentioned, in our first episode about Robert the Doll, years and years and years ago, there was a few different inception stories. Some say he was created as a window display for a children's clothing store, given his 3-foot stature, like more like a mannequin. Others claim that he can be traced back to the Steiff Company, the makers of the original teddy bear, which is a fact that I had completely forgotten about until I went back through my notes. But then there's the story that many have come to know and fear, and that surrounds the Otto family, a family from Key West, Florida. And that's the story I want to focus on. The the Otto family. This is like such a blast from the past. I had forgotten so much of this story. So the Otto family lived at 534 Eaton Street in Key West, Florida. And in the house, Thomas and Minnie Otto and their children. The youngest, Robert, born on October 25th of 1900. Now, the couple had a reputation for being absolutely horrible to the people that worked on their property. We're talking servants, maids, housekeeper, whatever, just awful, okay? And the old story goes that in 1905, a Haitian servant dedicated to watching Robert was fired after being caught performing what they believed to be black magic rituals. Right before leaving, she gives Robert a 3-foot doll. The doll had button eyes, and he wore a child-sized sailor outfit. And Robert loved this doll and named him after himself. I remember doing our original episode, I talked to Olivia about her American Girl dolls, and we were talking about that old story about the girl with the green scarf who, she never took it off. One day someone's like, why don't you ever take it off? And she's like, don't do it. They take it off, and then her fucking head falls off. Anyway, Robert brought little Robert everywhere with him. Okay, he sits him down at the dinner table with them when they're having supper. He watches movies with them. He's walking around town. He's got that fucking doll with him, okay? And Robert started requesting to be called Gene, his middle name, instead of Robert, because the name apparently now belonged to the doll. And he kept it like this for the rest of his life. From that day forward, he went by Gene. He's like, nope, this is the new Robert. Okay, I'm Gene now. Gene would spend all day long chatting away with Robert the doll. But when it came time to respond as the doll, he would speak in a much lower voice. So picture this. Picture you have this kid, right? This little 4-year-old kid. And he's just like, you hear him in the other room and he's like, Robert, what do you feel like doing today? And then he's like, I feel like watching a movie. It's like, what? I don't know, it's scary because the voice was apparently so low that it would freak the mom out because she's like, there's no way that my 4-year-old son could get his voice that low. And she also started to notice a really strange shift in her son's behavior because he was always walking out of his room after having an alleged fight with the doll. And on one occasion, she walked into 4-year-old Gene's room to find him cowering in the corner with Robert the doll sitting in a chair staring down at him. That gives me chills no matter how many times I think about this story or talk about this story. It freaks me out. This was the start of some very eerie occurrences in the Otto household. Objects being thrown across the room. Robert's other toys getting mysteriously mangled. Anytime Gene got in trouble, he immediately blamed Robert. And it started happening so frequently that the parents were like, listen, clearly this is just not working out between you two. So what we're going to do, because you're so scared of this doll, is we're going to put Robert into a box and put him in the attic. Some have reported that it was actually Robert's aunt who locked the doll away, and that after she did, she had a stroke and passed away that same night, though this hasn't been verified. Anyway, what we do know is as soon as the doll was out of sight, Gene's behavior seemingly went back to normal and he grew into a normal, nice kid. After graduating from high school, Eugene moved away from home, and as an adult, he found success as a painter, traveling all throughout New York and Paris, studying and perfecting his craft. In May of 1930, he got married to a woman named Annette Parker, who he had met while he was traveling through Paris. Eventually, the couple landed back in Key West after the death of his parents, when he inherited the 534 Eaton Street property. According to the official Robert the Doll website, Gene designed the gallery at the Fort East Martello Museum and had plans to make his own home a museum, complete with a wax imprint of his hands as a focal point. Though his dream never came to fruition, his home became known as the Artist House, and stories of the doll's strange behavior became commonplace with those who encountered him after Gene's death in 1974. So he moves home, right? He moves back into his childhood home. He's like, perfect, I'm going to make the attic my painter's studio. And upon entering the attic for the first time in God knows how long, he'd been gone for years at this point, he sees this box, and inside is his old friend Robert. And according to the folklore, like no time at all had passed, he becomes immediately attached to Robert the doll. He started bringing the doll everywhere with him, much to his wife's dismay. Yeah, I mean, I know we talked about this the first time we talked about it, but yeah, I'd be a little freaked out too. If the champ all of a sudden was walking around with this doll that had tormented him in his childhood, I'd be like, hey, This is something that I wish I knew before we got married. But anyway, this doll's now a part of his everyday life. Next thing you know, it's like he's at the dinner table. They're going to the movies. There's cars now, right? So they're riding around in the car. Robert's in there. He's all buckled in. I don't think they had seatbelts then, but well, who knows? I don't know. None of my business. But as time goes on, the two try and have a normal life in their home. And by two, I mean Gene and his wife. The rumor at the time says that Robert the Doll was like something straight out of a horror movie, moving around from room to room on his own, just like Annabelle. And people who lived in the area all talked about Robert. They said that sometimes he'd be staring out of the window at them. School kids all walked by, whispering and laughing with one another. Look up, Robert's up there. In 1974, at the age of 74, Jean Robert Otto passed away, Annette passing just 2 years later. But I guess she left the house after her husband died because she couldn't be alone in there with Robert. It's also said that he wrote in his will the house could be sold, but Robert must always be with it. The house is being sold. There was some wear and tear that needed to get taken care of before it could go on the market. One of the people working on the house was this plumber, and he heard giggling while working on the house one day and turned around to see Robert had moved across the room. As I mentioned, this was common knowledge in the area. There were so many rumors about Robert the Doll and the Otto household in general. A reporter from the Solares Hills paper named Malcolm Ross visited the house on one occasion and said, I quote, "It was like a metal bar running down my back. At first, when we walked through the door, the look on his face was like a little boy being punished. It was as if he was asking himself, who are these people in my room? And what are they going to do to me?" The reporter's friends told him Robert's backstory and pointed out the children's furniture. It was at this point that Malcolm noticed a change in the doll's expression, as if he was following the conversation. One of these men made a comment basically making fun of Gene Otto, and that's when Robert's expression turned to one of disdain. Quote, "There was some kind of intelligence there. The doll was listening to us." The home ended up being purchased by a woman named Myrtle Reuter, and she too had a child, a daughter who became enamored by the doll. Moving into a house and there's an old creepy doll, I'd be like, no, don't play with that. We're taking it to Goodwill, okay? It's going to Goodwill. And maybe Robert the Doll did have some sort of possessive magic to him that just made people want to buddy up. Robert soon became this little girl's companion. She ended up taking him with her when she moved to Von Pfister Street in 1980, and she kept the doll until 1994, afterwards donating him to the Fort East Martello Museum, telling workers that he moved around her house on his own and was without a doubt haunted. She passed away just 4 months later. Staff at the museum weren't super keen on Robert. Strange things began happening on the property shortly after his arrival, and at first they decided they were going to keep him in a back room, unsure on if they planned to exhibit the doll or not, because they're like, what if he's not actually haunted? What is this? Are we really going to build a whole display for this? But slowly, people began visiting, asking to see Robert. Hey, we heard he's in the back room here, so they were like, you know what? Fine, let's put him on display. After they did put him on display, cameras were malfunctioning. Lights and other electronics inside of the museum would flash on and off. Everything you should expect when you display a possessed haunted doll in your place. There's been many visits to Robert since. A huge part of the folklore around Robert the Doll is that you must apologize to him after looking at him. So on behalf of all of the cult babes, that's where we're wrapping things up this week. I will see you next time, and until next time, we are sorry for looking at you and talking about you, Robert the Doll. Goodbye.